Hey everybody, welcome to another video review. So this is a pretty special one. I've had this thing in my display cabinet for years, and it was a really tight fit in there, very difficult. The way my display cabinet is, the front glass doesn't open out, it slides. And so it's really awkward to sort of slide it, open to get this thing out. And so I haven't really even thought about doing a review for this, but just recently, because I bought another set of display cabinets for Module Case, I've been able to clean up my room quite a bit. And so finally, believe it or not, actually able to access these display cabinets. And so this is for, I think, one of my subscribers named Captain Howdy. And he, I believe, is about to start painting this. And so he wanted me to do a video review just to sort of get an idea for some of the paint colors that were used. And I told him I would, so I went and dug this thing out. It took a while to get out, but here we go. So this piece is called the Encounter, and it is sculpted by the Predator master Narin and painted by Joe Dunaway. I probably have one of the bigger collections of Narin, Joe Dunaway painted pieces, I think, in the world. I especially just kind of like their style and their combination. And so this is one of my favorite pieces, right up there with the King and Queen. And one of my top 10 favorite pieces ever in my collection. So we're going to back out. So this is the Encounter. And it, of course, refers to that classic iconic scene from Predator, where the Predator has Arnold essentially, against the ropes, and he's sort of grabbing him, and it's a pretty unforgettable moment from the movie, and Narin sort of immortalized this by sculpting it. It's an incredible sculpt and an incredible paint job by Joe. So, what's the background? Well. This is made out of resin. It's a garage kit, very limited. Narin made 50 of these. Now, sometimes, when Narin creates runs, so to speak, they're open runs. And so, he'll maybe announce a run of 30 or 40 or whatnot. And then maybe a few years later, he'll try to redo the mold and try to get another run. A lot of it, I think, just has to do with, how good the molds are, whether he can actually be bothered to try to mold another run off of the masters, if there's demand, things like that. But there are other pieces that he sculpts where he just doesn't ever make another run again. Some of them he numbers, etc. So I don't believe he's ever made another run of these, and he only made 50, I believe. I don't know what number I have. I have an original. You do have to be a little bit careful. This is an old kit, and as with most old kits that are super sort of desirable or super rare, it has been recasted. Oh, there it is. Very nice. I actually have the number here. So mine is number 24. And so authentic versions of these, not recast, actually, as you can imagine, are numbered and actually placed in the base. So pretty good. I have number 24 of the Encounter, and I don't think he's ever made, like I said, another run of these. So Narin is well known for his Predator work, both in terms of the breadth and depth of the imagination that he puts into them, and when it comes to movie Predator, he can sculpt a mean P1 or P2. His accuracy is pretty darn good, but I think over the years he's really made a name for himself. Not just confining himself to the classic movie Predators like the Wolf or the P1 or the P2, the City Hunter, for instance, but also just the imagination, having so many different versions, creating almost their own culture, taking inspiration from Alien versus Predator and comics and whatnot. And I just sort of love the universe that he's built over the decades. So many different Predators that he's created in so many different environments, with so many different takes. In his own way, he sort of created his own Predator expanded universe And the one thing I just think about is I would love to have, maybe some more fleshing out of that world, some stories or comic books or that type of thing to just sort of showcase them. And I think that's a testament both to Narin's sort of creative genius, as well as Joe sort of bringing all of that to life with his painting, is that every piece, when you finally get it, sort of tells a story, and you sort of wonder, your imagination takes over, and you're thinking about where that story goes. And that's kind of what Narin is known for. But this piece, of course, is from the movie, and it shows that when he puts his mind to it, he can absolutely destroy on that level as well. He can absolutely create a masterpiece as well if he really wants to go movie accurate and give you that classic P1, to every single detail. There's so much to go into here. So the background, when Narin first sort of captioned it and when he first introduced it over a decade ago, it just sort of captured my imagination, because he described it thusly, when he sort of was first advertising this piece on the forums, on the internet. This was, so old. It was before Facebook groups even. And he said that, when he first saw the movie, he wanted to sculpt this. But back then, he didn't have the skill. He didn't have the experience. And then he said, but now I do. And I mean, I don't know, for some reason, that really touched me because it implied so much. It implied the love that Narin have, the love that Narin has for the subject matter. And then, of course, this ideal that he could not reach at the time, but he continued to grow both as an artist, as a person, and with age and experience and continuous refinement of his art and his technique, he finally got to the point where he was skilled enough and ready to tackle this sort of his masterpiece, and then to sort of share that with everyone and to announce that, and you can kind of get a sense of the history and why this piece was so special for him. In terms of the price, this retailed for $500, so quite expensive because of the amount of resin and all of the love and the detail. You're having basically two separate statues, and the Predator, of course, is very, very detailed, very massive. And Arnold is no slouch himself. And then you have to ship it all the way from Thailand, which is not cheap. And then, of course, then Joe paints it up. And so all told, this entire thing, including everything, the price of the resin, the shipping, the paint, everything put together, probably ran me close to $2,000, $2,000. There's not very many of these painted by Joe. I think he's done maybe 3 or 4. I think mine was maybe the second. Either the first or the second. I can't tell, but we're a very select group. Those of you out there who follow this, give me a shout out, announce yourself, because we're a pretty select group of people. This is, I think, sold out now, but there's a few kits of this out there, but very few painted by Joe Dunaway. So I always say less than 5 in the world. So there's the background. So in terms of, again, the scenario, you know all about it. Let's just talk about the sculpt. It's a killer sculpt, as with all of Narin's work. Just look at the detail of the hoses. The dreadlocks are made of that special rubber that Narin was really into. That's such a pain in the butt to paint. But Joe, of course, brought it up, knocked it out of the ballpark. You can see the little wires that go all the way from, his laser all the way to the power source in the backpack. The gunmetal gray is perfect. The weathering is perfect, as with all of Joe's work. Here's the holes right here. Okay, this is multimedia right over here. This doesn't light up. This was before all the, all the work with the, power and LEDs. But he's painted so well, I can almost believe it's about to light up and move around. I'm just kind of focusing, getting really, really deep. This is the power of Joe Dunaway paint jobs. You can macro it all the way to within like ½ an inch, and it just holds up. I think I mentioned this before in multiple videos, but you just never lose any of that sense of depth. He puts so many layers and layers and layers of detail and subtle shading with his airbrushing, that, like I said, you're so close to the point where it's like the iPhone can't even handle how close it is. This is about as close I can get, and still, nothing. There's no imperfection. Here again, there's a little bit of the cloth multimedia, all the way to the bottom. Look at the detail of the cow, of the feet, the spotting, of the predator, gorgeous. And then he customized the base. Now, when you get from Narin, it's actually pretty, it's pretty basic. You have the big resin here, but all of the trees, just shrubbery, all of that, is added. So this is a little bit of a diorama. All of this is added by by Joe, and he did a really beautiful job with the base, in the sense that he used epoxy, I believe, a little bit of bark, and he just created a very realistic sort of muddy puddle. And if you don't touch it, and you just sort of look at it, you can almost swear that it was like a pool of muddy brown water that they're standing in. So he did a phenomenal job on the base. And then here is the tree, that Arnold is against. Again, it's resin, but painted and sculpted so beautifully. Look at that. Joe actually even added little tiny bits of moss to the background. Of course, this is a fake leaves. Again, a little bit of multimedia, but beautifully done. You can unfortunately tell the seam line here, but there's not much you can do about that because you have to ship it, obviously. So it ships in two pieces, the base at least, which is the diorama, and then the backing, and then it slots into position. So there's no way really to get around that. And to be fair, back when Narin was creating this, the sophistication for hiding seam lines wasn't quite where it is at in today's hobby. I mean, things evolve. TVs get better, cars get better, and molding and casting also gets better. A lot of this is done now with computers, 3D printing, etc. This was all not possible back when Narin was creating all of this. So this is all multimedia, little piece of shrubbery that was incorporated into the base, all added by Joe. So I really love the base. Again, I'm trying to get it from all different shots. It just looks like it's in a jungle. It looks like the mud is real. And then again, of course, you can see Arnold slammed against the back of it, and then the shrubbery. And then this is what the back of it looks like. Sort of unavoidable, of course. You have to have this because we're not in the jungle, so you do have to show the backing. But I think camouflaged pretty nicely. So very, very good. It's supposed to be shown primarily from the other side. So I'm going to back up now so you can see this in its entirety. Okay, beautiful work. So here we go. Let's show you the encounter all the way around. So it's not all macro. You get a feel for the entire piece and get an idea for how big this is. All right, very good. See how Joe actually showed the blood seeping from the foot of the predator where he was wounded. So it's green and almost lights up a little bit and glows a little bit. So again, beautiful effect. Just love the attention to the dots, the dot patterns, as well as the weathering of the armor. This is a very sort of unique, to Joe himself. I've seen a lot of paint jobs that do come close, but nothing that really completely replicates the feel that you have from a Joe Dunaway paint job. Here again, all the way up, the bone necklaces, and then the mask. Right on over here. I mean, this is about as as accurate a 1/6 scale P1 as you can get. Here's all of the the bandolier, the backpack. Amazing job weathering. And then try to look over his shoulder. Now, another criticism, if you can even call it that, is that, you know, obviously these are two completely separate pieces. Arnold has to be suspended off of the back of the mud wall, and then, you know, the Predator and Arnold has to be, you know, connected. And so the actual hand gripping Arnold's neck, this hand is with Arnold, and then you have to connect it here. So you can actually see that there is a little bit of a seam line right there. Again, it's one of those things where it's kind of unavoidable. In terms of if you want to ship this, you have to figure out where to go. So again, the seam line here is a little obvious. The gap is a little wide, but that's how he's engineered. So let's talk about Arnold. First of all, his likeness is really, really good. At the 1/6 level, you know, there are limits, of course. He's not Hot Toys good, but remember that Narin doesn't use digital files or whatnot. I mean, he hand sculpted this likeness at 1/6 scale by, you know, like again, by hand. And so as a hand sculpt, I think the likeness is, you know, amazing. It's phenomenal. I love it. Sure, there are better Arnold likenesses at the 1:1 scale in silicon, for instance, at the 1/3 scale or Hot Toys. But for a free sculpt, this is definitely not embarrassing. You can definitely tell this is, you know, Dutch. So I'm trying to get a little bit closer without ruining things. So notice all of the subtle paint details that Joe Dunaway paint, you know, kind of is braying out. That there's a sheen to his skin. It's sweaty, it's slimy, it's wet because he's been in the water. You can see sort of the, you know, the 5 o'clock shadow. Here's the arms, there's the little gloss there. You know, very, very nice picture here. Very nice job. And I'm gonna turn around to the other side and show that right here. Okay, and then again, Narin sculpted Arnold's body in just a spectacular fashion, and then Joe painted it. You can see all of the dirt. This is very tricky to paint. You know, you have to essentially, you know, get the flesh tones right. Then you have to gloss it to give you the effect of the sweat. Then you have to add the blood, the grime, and just the dirt effects. And so this is not a simple paint job. The Predator, of course, typically demands tremendous detailing of the paint. By the way, you can see the really, you know, the quills right over here. So again, you know, Joe doesn't really miss any of that. He's not going to miss the quills, of course. You can even see the little tiny quills coming from underneath the mask. So these are little tiny details that, again, Joe he just doesn't miss these. Look at the wound of the arm. So getting back to Dutch, typically the Predator demands, of course, the most detailing, but, you know, in this case, Dutch himself also is very, very complicated. You really have to do justice to Narin's sculpt, and Narin did a phenomenal job, again, with the body. Look at the anatomy, the pecs, the six-pack, all the little muscles, all very accurate, very anatomical. Very natural. So he didn't just do a great job on Arnold in terms of the face and the likeness, but a great job with his body as well. And, you know, Arnold is one of those stars whose body is almost as iconic as his face. And so you can't get that wrong. I like to point out all the wonderful vein work that Narin sculpted and that Joe Dunaway highlighted. Look at the veins all the way along the biceps, all the way tracking down to the forearms, and then across the hands. Look at the hands, you know, and then look at the detail that Joe put onto the watch. You can actually even see the little tiny hands there. I mean, that is phenomenal at 1/6 scale level. That's pretty amazing. Trying to appreciate all the work of the hands, the fingertips, the dirt and the grime. So you have to move from side to side to appreciate it. Here's another great shot of the dirty fingernails The veins again sticking out all along his biceps and his arm, the wound on the shoulder, and then of course, you know, the rest of the anatomy here. Again, backing out. And then we're gonna turn. So amazing piece. And then I would be remiss if I skipped the lower half. Look at the amazing work on the camouflaged pants right out of the movie. And then of course, the paint job of the boots and the belt, extremely realistic, both in sculpt and in paint. Let's look at the other side. I'm trying to take a look at the boots from between the Predator's legs. There you go, right here. Look at the detailing here. Hopefully it'll focus a little bit better. There you go. That's a really nice shot here of the textures, the laces, and then of course the camouflage pants. You can even see the wrinkles, the way that he sculpted it, all the way through, and then the belt. So Arnold, great work of art. The Predator, work of art. This scene immortalized from the movie in resin, modified by Joe Dunaway. I mean, what more is there, you know, to say about this piece? So perfect in every way. This was so popular, by the way, that I think Narin took the Predator because, you know, I think this was one of his first P1s. He did a P1 called Alien versus Predator, where he had, it's called Bug Hunt, and I reviewed that at a later time. I own that piece as well, of course. But it shows like a P1, you know, fighting an alien. But I think this is the one, the very first one of the first ones he's ever done of the true movie P1, okay? The other one, he had a P1 fighting an alien. But this was so popular, and at the time, just so revolutionary. You know, remember, before this, I don't know whether this was even, if it even predates, you know, Stan Winston Studios when Stan was alive, partnering with Sideshow to give us the P1 maquette. I don't even know if this predates that, you know, maybe it was about contemporary with that piece. But back then, there wasn't a lot of great P1s, and as a kit, this was just head and shoulders above everything that had really been done. It was just a killer sculpt, and so it was so popular, but this piece was so limited and so expensive. You know, remember that at the time, most garage kits are looking at $100. $200 was already considered, you know, like wow, right? $300, we're talking less than 5% of any garage kit justifying that price tag. And so for Narin to bust out with a $500 garage kit, that's $500 unpainted. It's just kind of, at the time, it just set the, you know, the garage kit world on fire, like a flame. People were talking, debating, you know, is he out of his mind? Who's gonna spend $500 on a garage kit? It's not even painted. You know, there was yays and nays on both sides. This, you know, was available for many, many years. It took years to sell out. But I think when you have it in hand, you realize, you know, where that money comes from. You realize why it's worth it. And at the time, you know, it was because this was the very best P1 on the market. You know, really in this scale as well, 1/6, no argument. Now, you know, things are different. You got Prime 1, you got XM, all different, you know, different producers, tons of customs. So, you know, this wasn't quite as rare, but back then it absolutely was. And so this was so popular, he actually took this guy and actually separated it, put him in a different pose, and then sold that one by itself as the P1. And I did a review of that earlier on my channel, you can take a look at, but this predates all of that. So again, you know, a beautiful naturalistic pose, nothing stiff about it. When I see this piece, you know, it just takes me back to that scene in the movie. And of course, I always enjoy, you know, Narin's work and Joe's work. Joe did just a spectacular job as usual on this thing. So I'm very proud to own it. It is one of my absolute favorite pieces. This goes right behind King and Queen. You know, if you were to ask me what is, of all of my collection, what is my absolute favorite Narin, Joe Dunaway piece, right, combination, I think the King is still King and Queen, which is so ambitious and so amazing. and I of course done a review on that. So you can look you can definitely look at that just to see why I feel so strongly about that. But if that's one, this is very close to in terms of again the Narin Joe Dunaway combination. Doesn't lose anything with age. Gets better with age, like a fine wine. One of the best pieces out there. And so now, this is sold out. You can't find it. Please be careful of recasts. Now that you're seeing the real thing, I hope you understand that a recast can never, ever truly, capture the quality of the original. And this type of work does deserve to be supported. Joe Dunaway doesn't paint recasts, obviously. And so, if you really want this piece, it's worth tracking down. There's only 50 of them out there. I know that more than 70% are unpainted. Just I know for sure, very few people have it painted. They're probably just sitting in somebody's closet gathering dust. So keep your eyes open, send out feelers. If you really want to get one, I think you can. And I don't think it's going to sell for that much more than the 500. Its initial price was so steep to begin with, but just be very careful of recasts. They're all over the place. The original ones, buy from reputable people, and understand that the original ones will have an actual number incorporated into the base. So right over here, mine is number 24. A lot of Narin's major pieces all have that. So there you have it. Captain Howdy, I hope that this was worth the wait. Sorry it took me a little bit of time. I did want to, put this together not only for myself, but for you as well. I wish you the very best painting it. I'm sure you're going to do a magnificent job, and hopefully this review gives you enough reference shots and enough inspiration, like you said, to get it done, so you have an idea of what's possible and what can be done. I've seen a lot of different paint jobs of this piece by a lot of different painters. None of them are horrible. None of them are bad. They're all solid. But for my money, obviously, I might be biased because I'm a big fan of his. This is, in my opinion, this is in a league of its own. Okay, this is the gold standard for bringing this piece to life. Even better than Narin himself. I mean, I don't know how Narin would feel about this, hearing this, but he does a lot of his work traditional with oil paints, and that has a certain flavor in and of itself. And I think he painted an original Encounter, which was magnificent. That was what he used to sell the actual kit. And that was breathtaking. It sold a lot of kits. But for my money, I like Joe's, obviously, Joe's interpretation, even better than Narin himself, the Narin's version as well. So there you have it. The Encounter from the classic Predator movie, P1 versus Arnold. Does not get better than this, folks. Until next time, do take care.